serious? Cheaters of Reddit, how did your affair start and end? I was young, 19. I had been with a girl for a year when my parents decided I needed to pay rent. So I found a roommate and got an apartment. Day 1 I go to the office to turn in my walkthrough paperwork. The girl in the office made my heart skip. She made me a believer in the idea of love at first sight. She moved in across from my apartment a couple weeks later and we started to hang out. One night we slept together. The next day I broke up with my girlfriend. Me and new girl talked and we both wanted to be together. She moved in with me a month later. That was 17 years ago. She's currently asleep upstairs next to our daughter. Started with tutoring me in math back in high school while I had a serious girlfriend. For high school, I ended up living a double life where everything I did with my math tutor I would end up doing with my girlfriend as well at a later point. It got so bad with the math tutor that I went on vacation with her and told my girlfriend I was going to see family. After I graduated I cut things off with both of them and through some sort of witchcraft after they found out about each other I was able to stay friends with both of them. I just met someone so much better for me. I met someone that was basically my female twin and we hit it off instantly. I ended up breaking up with the girl I was with and dating her for 6 months. Turns out there's such a thing as too much alike. I was in a dud of a marriage. I married too young and against my better judgment. My husband was a controlling and sexually repressed man who did not respect me and I did no respect him. I found out that my husband was on dating sites and talking to women online attempting to solicit dates. He was actively seeking to cheat and the only thing stopping him from taking it to a physical realm was the fact that none of the women were interested in him. We worked on our marriage over the years to try to resolve his online cheating, but he'd always start up again. Eventually I got so emotionally worn out by it that I just didn't have it in me to care much anymore. I met a man at work who I was instantly attracted to on a mental and a physical level, something I'd never had with my husband. We started out with harmless conversations and became work friends. We then found excuses to text each other when not at work. We'd grab lunch together here and there, at first with groups and then with just the two of us. I couldn't wait to go to work every day and see him. I thought about him all the time. I knew I was heading toward dangerous ground but I didn't want to stop. We started flirting and I began to sneak away from home to meet up with him for hikes, dinner, you name it. I met up with him for hours at a time on evenings and weekends. And my husband never really noticed because his attention was always occupied with his friends or his online chats with women. My friend from work and I were always careful not to make physical contact. Until one day in his car when he leaned over to help me with my jammed seatbelt and he kissed me. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever felt in my life. Over the next few weeks meeting up to have dinner turned into meeting up to find a secluded spot and make outs in his car. Then that eventually turned into groping, hand jobs, oral sex. You get the idea. I could not get enough of this guy. I felt tremendously guilty the entire time because I never thought of myself as the type who would cheat. I came clean with my husband before my affair progressed any deeper. I broke off the affair and agreed to try marriage counseling. I quickly changed my mind when during the course of an argument, I didn't want to go to his church and he wanted me to. My husband slapped me and told me I wasn't allowed to have any unsupervised visits with my family or friends anymore. After I told my husband I wanted a divorce, he attempted to destroy my life. He tried to get me fired. Told all the neighbors and everyone at his church what happened. Posted our business on Facebook tagging my friends and family, you name it. He also threatened to beat up the guy I had been cheating with, which, honestly, would have only ended up in severe embarrassment and injury for himself. It didn't take long after filing divorce papers for me to hook back up with my friend and officially start dating him. My husband harassed and threatened us both until my boyfriend called his bluff and then he just sort of faded out. My boyfriend is now my husband and we have been together for 10 years and going strong. I love him more than anything and I respect him more than anyone I've ever met. I would never dream of cheating on him and I feel confident that he'd never cheat on me. TLDR. It started because I was married to a jackass and it was a disaster. But it ended well for me. A few years ago, I met this amazing guy. Let's call him Guy A. Fell very much in love with him. He was so kind and sweet. We kissed a few times and hooked up once. but he was starting to see this other girl, so it never went further than that. I was pretty heartbroken over it. Fast forward a few years. I'm a year and a half into this horrible relationship. We'll call him Ithead. Ithead is a compulsive liar. Yells at me. Threatens to break up every time I do something he doesn't like. Like whenever I had a panic attack. I'm at a concert without Ithead and I look across the dance floor. And I see Guy A. dancing his heart out. Laughing and just being amazing. Hadn't seen him since the time we hooked up. Which was a few years ago. My heart skipped a beat. I approached him. We talked for hours. And I told him I was living with a really icky guy and that I wanted out. When he kissed me goodbye, I just knew. I continued the relationship with my Ithead for about a week, while still seeing the other guy on the side, before I finally worked up the courage to break up with him. I've been with Guy ever since. And haven't looked back once. Gay guy, was seeing a guy, let's call him A. Nothing crazy serious but headed that direction. He was at a college pretty far away but was from my area. Started talking to a guy, let's call him B. I had a class with who I was pretty attracted to. We start talking. Turns out B has been seeing A for the last year or so too. And they actually got arrested together fairly recently. B and I got along really well and started seeing each other. B stopped seeing A but I was still talking to him. It all ended when A was in town and came over one night and saw a text from B show up on my phone that was sitting on the table. He didn't know we knew each other and he definitely didn't know we were hooking up. He wasn't happy and we broke up. B and I had a short summer affair and realized neither of us wanted a relationship. We're now best friends and there's nobody I trust more in the world. I moved across the county and we still talk all the time and go to music festivals together. Occasionally snaps me flaccid D pics, so not sure what that's about. I've never really got around to asking. I was the mistress in a marriage. The guy was an old BF from high school. We dated off and on. When we were off he would date this girl Kelly, and when we broke up for the final time he went and married her. Almost a year after we broke up. I was back in town on summer break from college and ran into him at my summer job. He gave me this sob story about how Kelly wanted a divorce and was taking his kid from him. I, stupidly, believed him. We exchanged numbers. Started talking daily. He invited me over to his apartment. Showed me his divorce paperwork. And ultimately things got sexual for a couple weeks. One day I swung by to pick up a pair of earrings I'd forgotten the day before. His best friend from high school answered the door. I asked if Guy was around. Best friend said no, why would he? Turned out Guy was actually house sitting for best friend. It wasn't his apartment. Best friend also informed me that Guy and Kelly were in the process of buying a house. Their marriage was fine. I was livid and disgusted. I went to work the following day. And in walks Kelly. I ask her what she's doing later that night and if she's available to talk. We meet up after I get off and I lay it all out for her. She teared up a bit. But ultimately she was pissed. She gives me their address and tells me to show up there unannounced the next day. I do and Guy is white as a sheet trying to get me to leave. Kelly shows up and they end up in a screaming match. So Guy ended up getting divorced and settled with a chunk of child support because Kelly informed the right people about Guy's pot plants. None of us talk anymore. When I think about it, I have to shower at least twice. Was in a 5-year relationship with my girlfriend at the time. I started to talk to an old co-worker from my teens that I always had a thing for, but she lived a couple states away so I knew nothing would come of it. Well, it turns out that she still had family in my area and regularly visited. We made plans to get some dinner and catch up, for old time's sake. It ended in both of us getting drunk, renting a hotel room and having some fun. This happened a few times over the next several months until I get a text from her. It's a picture of a sonogram of our child. I was going to come clean to my GF. Because I never had a father growing up and I didn't want to put my child through that. However, she ending up losing it a month or so into the pregnancy and we stopped talking. It left me feeling very guilty and anxiety stricken. 0/10 would not do again. Edit. To answer some questions. No, I never told her. We broke up a few months later for unrelated problems in the relationship. No, not still together. As far as I know the sonogram was legit. Didn't get with the coworker. I have a healthy relationship now and I love my GF. I'll never repeat this mistake. Honestly, it stemmed from being insecure. I don't want to believe it. But they say once a cheater always a cheater. And I've cheated multiple times. It's wrong. But I really loved everyone I cheated on and it had nothing I do with that person. It's entirely been because of my own issues. Doesn't make it okay. But it's reality. I'm just being honest. I know it's wrong to cheat and there's no excuse. I truly am sorry to the people I've hurt. I've been married for 4 years and never considered anyone but my husband. I am totally devoted and in love. A year ago we both went out with some mutual friends. The night went on and he got tired but said I should stay since I never really go out. I was excited to be outside of my comfort zone and drank too much. I blacked out and woke up naked in a bed with an acquaintance who is infamous for partying and her spouse. When I woke up I had 20 missed calls from my husband and the girl's spouse was fondling me. I went home and told my husband but it was hard because I couldn't remember more than a few seconds of what had happened the night before and avowed since that it was all a nightmare. I felt like I didn't even know myself. I had never wanted anything like that to happen. I wasn't attracted to either of those people and I'm not a flirtatious person. I hate being touched and I consider my husband to be the best thing in my life. He was not angry with me but I felt I couldn't live with what I did. I tried to kill myself and we moved from New York back to our home state of Nevada. Things seem normal now but I still consider that night the worst of my life. Throwaway because I have cheated on every single person I've been involved with except for one. I compartmentalize love and sex so the two have very little, if any, overlap. I also never had much desire to fix relationships, preferring them to just cease to exist. So, I guess every affair started when the relationship started to get a little bit serious or have a problem, and ended when I was bored with the person I was cheating with because they got too serious. I met my now husband and completely changed. As terrible as it sounds, I actually give a shit about this relationship. My ex-husband and I weren't even sleeping in the same room when I met my affair. Ex just wasn't interested in sex. And it was causing so many fights because I was so unsatisfied. I met my affair on WoW, and we knew each other for about a year and had never flirted or anything like that. One day I found out that he had settlers of Cajun and mozzarella sticks, and lived an hour and a half away. I hopped in the car and drove down and we hit it off really well. He didn't know I was married at the time. I really needed to get laid. It had been about 6 months, at least. The affair never ended. Or I guess it officially ended when my divorce was finalized. He and I are married now and have been together for 6 years. He cheated on me. Things weren't going great. I decided to go cheat as well. It took no time before we opened the relationship and things have been better in terms of that since. I had an affair with a co-worker that was significantly older than me. We were both in very unhappy relationships. He with a woman whose spending habits spent them into multiple mortgages and me with a man that was rapidly developing a serious drug habit. It took about a year before anybody caught on. Co-workers started noticing. He eventually ended up in a round of layoffs. I got caught first and my boyfriend moved out. Not long after that, he filed for divorce from his wife and moved in with me. It was a vicious divorce that ended up lasting years. We've been married for 10 years now and are still very happy. His ex is doing great also. I was 40, had been married 10 plus years and had a couple of kids. Our marriage had turned into something that made me really unhappy. We barely had sex and our connection seemed completely gone. We fought a lot and it was always me who needed to apologize and compromise. I met a woman 15 years younger at the office. We started flirting and it turned into an intense emotional affair that lasted about a month. I fell deeply in love with her and decided I should really divorce my wife. Since I was so unhappy, I told my wife about the other woman and that I wanted to divorce. My wife begged me to try and work it out, go into couples counseling, and started having sex with me every day. I stayed and agreed to take 3 months to see if we could work it out. It was incredibly hard but we eventually did feel like we overcame it and we're still together. Welp, I was young and stupid. I was in a relationship where neither of us were happy but we were too attached or afraid to end it. He was working insane hours so we never saw each other and I just didn't care for him anymore but I didn't realize it until I met a friend of my roommates. We'll call him Jim. He swept me off my feet. Jim made me feel special in a way that I hadn't felt in years. He put it in my head that my ex-significant other didn't love me or care about me and that I deserved better etc. Eventually this all led to this weird pseudo relationship. We talked constantly but never hooked up. Until one night after a bad fight with my boyfriend, I fled to Jim's house for comfort. That night our physical relationship began. Jim made me feel wanted and he made me smile and laugh and I enjoyed spending time with him. It was a fun little secret at first but I knew what I was doing was wrong and I couldn't handle the guilt anymore. I finally ended things with my boyfriend and that is when Jim completely ghosted me. It hurt worse than the breakup. My support system and motivation to leave my boyfriend of 3 years was gone because apparently it got too real. I was naive and young and vulnerable. Jim came into my life when I was heading towards the end of my first serious relationship and I was very lonely. I hate myself for what I did until I learned that my significant other had been cheating on me for the entirety of our relationship and was waiting for me to leave so he could be with her. So I guess it all worked out. Was with a girl about 4 months but she never showed much interest in me physically. So I started sleeping with a rather promiscuous co-worker who had been with most of the male staff in the back of my car after work. 2 months later girlfriend broke up with me for unrelated reasons and me and co-worker are living together happily. She'd been my boss at my high school job. I reconnected with her in my early 30s and decided to make a move. I wasn't the cheater. She was married. Throwaway for obvious reasons. I was the other guy in a 2+ year long affair. She was married and still is. No happy ending for me at least. Former work associates. We'd hung out a few times and just watched TV movies. Smoked, drank but nothing happened for a long time. I had an emotional and physical attraction to her and the feeling was mutual. But we never crossed a line. One time at a party she got too drunk and since I was her ride, we both stayed there in a spare bed together. Honestly, I wanted the intimacy of being close to somebody and I wanted to make sure she didn't get sick in her sleep. I didn't do anything and neither did she. Nothing happened that night. We hung out a week or so later and she said she had liked my beard rubbing against her and then asked me to do it again. This progressed over days to more intimately cuddling, grinding, groping and finally I kissed her. It was awesome. Making out progressed to oral then she really wanted to have sex one night. I declined at first, really, but we had sex. Then again, and again. She explained sometime after this that at the beginning she was feeling distant from her husband. He was pushing her to have kids and, according to her, being a D. I wasn't that guy. It ended fairly recently because she was trying to distance herself from me and kept saying that, to the point I just said duck it and gave up. It ended up in a minor argument and she asked if I wanted to break up. I said I wasn't certain. So she dumped me instead. TLDR. It started out with a little bit of intimacy and ended when I got so frustrated at her, and vice versa I guess. I cheated 3 different occasions while I was with my so. When I mean 3 different occasions I mean I had sex with another girl 3 different times. It started with my not being satisfied with my so at the time. I started drinking to cope with our relationship. Drinking made me lose a lot of my ability to care or think rationally. I hit up a girl I used to know with intentions of sleeping with her. We talked back and forth. Meet up 3 different times and that was that. My so at the time never found out and I never told her. Mine was not very scandalous. But I can tell you it's the only thing in my life I regret doing. It's a weak and cowardly move to make. Exciting. And horribly. Every time. I began a relationship with a guy from work who was separated from his wife. Then she found out and contacted me. Turns out he had done this before. Many times and they were not separated or considering divorce as they are Muslim. They weren't close emotionally or sleeping in the same bed but they were very much officially together. I felt ducking awful. I'd fallen so hard for this guy. His wife was absolutely amazing. A truly wonderful person. I'm a piece of it for what I did to her. They're still together as far as I know. I had a FWB who wanted something more but I just didn't at the time. Then some new girl started messaging me and I started to really dig her and left the FWB to pursue the new girl. The new girl was a little possessive and wouldn't even kiss me unless I made her my girlfriend. I eventually asked her out and we started dating. She obviously wasn't putting out yet, so I just hit up my FWB again and we ducked probably for like a month or two. I stopped cheating once me and the new girl started to have sex. A couple months later the FWB told my girlfriend because she couldn't deal with the guilt. Girlfriend extremely pissed but ultimately forgave me. Haven't cheated since and I do realize what I did was ducked up. About a year and a half later I think I'm realizing that I was just too afraid to love my FWB. And it's way too late to reverse everything. This whole experience really has changed how I view relationships and sex. I hope this gets buried. Dated a girl for over a year. Asked another girl for nudes. Got them. Broke up with girlfriend due to the chest crushing guilt. Dated girl who sent me nudes for like 3 weeks because I felt obligated. Broke up with her as she was a piece of it. Ended in suicide attempt because the guilt was too much. Still alive. Still feel guilty in every waking moment. Still have nightmares. Still miserable about it. Worst thing I ever have done or will ever do. Started off as a two people who became friends. We then started both working nights and would sometimes hang out after work. Through a bit of time, things turned to an affair. I told my wife. I came clean because I didn't want her to find out from anyone other than me. It was my fault and my mistake and I owned up to it. I had been serious with a guy for about a year and a half. Things in the relationship were terrible. He was emotionally and physically abusive. Now I'm not an idiot. I tried to break it off for almost a year. I knew the relationship was bad for me. But every time I tried to, he would manipulate me back with various threats. Well, one day I met this other brilliant guy. He immediately saw right through all the bullet walls and fake smiles. I quickly fell for him and his wonderful personality. It was my fault. We just clicked with each other and became very close friends. I kissed him whilst still being with the abusive D, but despite everything my ex did to me I still felt bad. Eventually I managed to break up with the ex. Not through lack of trying. I'm still with my so. It has been 5 years now. I feel bad still. It wasn't at all my so fault. He was very innocent and was only trying to save me. I was in a lesbian relationship for a while. We had been dating for 3 years and had slowly drifted away from each other in that time. I started talking to this guy that I've always wanted to befriend. One thing led to another and I ended up sleeping with him. The night I slept with him, I went home and immediately told my girlfriend and broke it off with her. Eventually I started dating the guy I slept with and now we're getting married in August. I'm still very good friends with my ex-girlfriend. However, it did take us a while to get back to the friendship stage. Dated a girl in college. We got engaged but only because I was scared of being alone. Wasn't happy, and when the opportunity presented itself from a friend, we began sexting and sending pictures back and forth. Nothing physical, but emotional, and as soon as my fiancé found out, she left. Her fiancé, the other girl, found out, but forgave her and she's now happily married. Haven't heard from either since then. I was married and really unhappy. Long backstory that isn't super important, and probably books down to poor communication. I flirted with a couple of our friends, jokingly at first but more seriously as time went on. After a while I asked my husband if I could sleep with them, and he told me I could do whatever I wanted. Just don't tell him about it. Since this was obviously passive aggressiveness, I waited around a month and asked again to make sure the answer wouldn't change. When I asked again he said the same thing. I decided I didn't care enough at this point to not just take it at face value. So I ended up telling the guy I was flirting with and we had sex. Anyway, my marriage ended. I actually have a job now. Me and the other guy have been together for about 2 years now, and I'm a lot happier than I was before. So I guess it all turned out pretty well. My high school sweetheart, who I was madly in love with, decided she couldn't support my decision to join the military, so we broke up even though I had a year before I shipped to boot camp. I got involved with another girl who I was friends with through my prior relationship. Right before I left for boot camp, high school sweetheart approached me at a party about how sorry she was and supported me. One thing led to another and we started our shenanigans there. For the added twist, I eventually left the girl I was seeing for my high school sweetheart, but sooner or later found myself back in her bedroom. Then high school sweetheart and I broke up, but we stayed friends with benefits. Then I started casually dating a girl I worked with while being friends with benefits with both my previous exes. Then within 6 months of each other, all 3 girls got married to someone else. Even the girl I was casually dating. After a while 2 of the girls approached me again, but I declined. They are married. They can go somewhere else and cheat, I'm sure. But I'm not going to cause or be in that mess. Did twist. They all 3 knew each other because of me and our relations. At first they hated each other. Now a few years later I see them advertising each other's at work's products on Facebook. I was the third party. Started hooking up with a family friend who was in a loveless relationship. She was a lot older than me. Whole different AskReddit thread there. We did our thing in secret a while. Eventually she left her husband and we've been together for about 10 years since then. I know everyone is like, I'm sure she just said it wasn't real between her and then hubby to draw you in, but it's the truth. He is one of my close friends and even he confirmed they were no longer a real couple. I cheat on all my girlfriends. I'm upfront about it. I don't really want to have a girlfriend in the first place. But if they insist, then sometimes that's how it goes. Usually then it's just don't let me find out. If I find someone I want to be monogamous with, then I will be. But I don't really see the point at this stage in my life. I'm in my 30s. Good looking. Making money. etc. The world is kinda my buffet right now. I'm not ever in danger of not having company. So why limit myself? I had been dating a guy on and off for 2 years back in high school. In high school, I had made a friend and she had a really hot brother. But he didn't live in our city. I had met him once when I joined her for a concert. I flirted with him the whole time I was there. I felt guilty, but I couldn't stop. Ultimately, nothing happened. I returned back home from the concert and put him out of my mind for the time being and continued my relationship with my ex. 1 year later, I graduated high school and my friend and I were set to attend college orientation together. Her brother attended the college we were going to and he offered to let us stay in his apartment for orientation week. I was pretty excited because I still had a crush on her brother, but I tried not to show it. During that week, I got to know him more, and the more I got to know him, the more I liked him. We connected in a way I didn't think was possible and he made me feel something I had never felt. As bad as it sounds, during that week, my ex was just a bother. I didn't want to talk to him because at this point, I was really falling for this guy. I couldn't help myself. We ended up kissing and admitting to each other that we liked each other. After I returned from orientation, I couldn't put him out of my mind. We would text and FaceTime every day. My ex found about him after I had broken up with him, and while it was messy, in a way I don't regret it because I am so incredibly happy with my boyfriend now. I truly think this is who I was meant to be with. I came home early one day and saw a used condom in the toilet. Then I confronted her, ended our 4-year relationship and started my descent into depression. Which one? I'm in my early 50s and had several over the last 20 years or so. 1. Went abroad with friend of partner. Had drinks. Post-drink massage went overboard. 1 off because friend was engaged. 1. Another friend of partner invaded my bedroom when she was out. Went on and off for some time. 1. I looked for someone on a dating site. She responded. Had a long affair. Got found out when she stopped taking birth control. Got pregnant at baby. 1. As a result of the last one we stayed married and agreed to be discreetly open. 1. Had a friend who I went on non-sexual dates with for about a year. 1. Blind friend of partner kept trying to play with my D on multiple occasions. I ended up giving her oral sex a few times. She told a friend all about it. Got cold feet about it. 1. Had an FWB who I went to the movies and drinks with for a few years. 1. Current GF has been living with me for a few years at my work home. I've missed some out, for convenience. Started with me. Married for 7 years. Met him at work. I had long since fallen out of love with my husband but never left because I had a pretty sweet thing going. Big house. Big income. etc. About a month before I met the man I cheated with, I discovered a secret email account logged in on his laptop through which he was soliciting sex from a Craigslist hooker. That was it for me. Rather than leaving, I started sleeping with my coworker. This led to me finding every excuse I could to get out of the house and go see him. My coworker and I had agreed we simply had a FWB thing going. But as time moved on, we discussed what things would be like if I left my husband. We could be roommates since his current roommate was getting married. Knowing that I had a place to go gave me the courage to file for divorce. After I filed, my coworker broke down and told me he loved me. I loved him too. We have been together for 5 years now and are married. I wish I could say I regret cheating, but I don't. I'm happy. First, I don't regret cheating at all. I knew the marriage was over before I met the current significant other. The ex-spouse was a nightmare, abuse included. The current so showed me how I should have been treated. Life is much better and I'm safe. My relationship was strained with the wife. Hadn't had second years. Got talking to one of my best friends about her strained marriage as well. Things got intimate after a few years. We both divorced and are very happy together. Started in college while we were both dating people who weren't great fits for us. Ended in marriage. Doing well.